Hello, screenwriters. Welcome to Writing for Screens. Screenwriting, step by step. This is episode number 16 in this ongoing project. My name is Glenn Gers. I am happy to be here with you, showing you how I go through the creation of a script from rough idea through to maybe a finished script. We'll see how it goes. Trying to let you see a possible process. It's not the only process. Every artist has to figure out what's productive for them. I'm just trying to give you things that I've worked out for myself over time. Hello, Wolf. Wolf Powers is here watching. Hi, good to see you. For those of you who are not able to watch live, which is just about everybody, I am still very excited that you are watching this on YouTube video, and I am very, very happy if you can't make it on the Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's okay. You can still ask me a question or tell me a comment by going to writingforscreens.com and clicking on Contact Me. You can write a message. It'll come to me as an email. If you don't feel like doing that, just put a comment in the comments of this or any of my other videos. They come right to me too. And I will try to answer absolutely as many as I can. Let's get started with the writing stuff. I did some work over the 24 hours since our last exciting episode. And one of the things I tried to do was clean up the outline. When you're working, I think it's very important to make your outline a working document. I created this format of several basic documents. Notes, where I just write stuff down as they come to me, or when I'm trying to force myself to work, which is part of the process. I do that here in the notes, and I just ask myself questions. I write down the answer. When something seems good, I copy it and paste it into the overview, which is kind of my Bible, my list of rules and visions for myself, or into the outline. An outline is a list of scenes. This is incredibly useful to keep in mind. An outline is not something that you show other people. It's a working document in which you figure out what are the scenes. And the reason you do that is because you have to think in scenes. Thinking in scenes is the secret to screenwriting. That is what makes a screenwriter, somebody who can take all the stuff of the world and put it into scenes. Hey, Stana is on. Hello, Stana. Glad to see you. Happy to have live viewers. So let's get back to these docs. Okay, so here in the outline, one of the things I did was I had written a bunch of notes about Norman and Madeline, and I cleaned them up. I thought about, first thing I did is I went through and anything that wasn't actually a note to myself about a thing to do, about a thing that I needed, I tried to get rid of it because I was copying my jabbering notes in which I ask myself questions and tell myself answers. Well, one of the things you do is get rid of the question. Just leave the answer. And that's how you build yourself a vision. So one of the first things I did was I thought about Madeline, who Madeline is, what she wants. And I tried to figure out what we knew about her from her past, from her marriage to George, the dead podcaster. So I started to ask myself questions. I knew that because she needs to have, at the point that we meet her, she needs to be a rather unhappy with her life. And what I wanted to do was figure out a way that we could have her married to somebody as nuts as George, because we need George to be nuts to provide us with an obsessive, crazy amateur crime solver who will have found the secret to the serial killer's identity. So we need that. So therefore, George has to be kind of a nut. So the question is, why was Madeline married to kind of a nut? Hello, Rigovich. Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming. So the question is, if Madeline was married to a nuts guy, did she leave him because he was nuts? I decided that was a little... It just didn't seem like she was going to be a lot of fun to be with if she had if she and Norman, our other main character, both had the same attitude, which is sort of a scolding, critical attitude towards these crime solvers. I needed her not to be like that. So the vision I've come up with is sort of a story of a woman who got married young, was wild. She married a kind of nutsy guy. Rigovich says, welcome in the UK, and I appreciate that. That is so cool. I have to say, one of the wildest things about doing this is this concept that there are people all over the place watching at the same time or checking in later on video, that we can connect to all sorts of people who I would not ordinarily be able to teach or share with. That is really cool. So, Madeline and George and Norman. Madeline was married to this nutsy guy when she was young, and the point would be that it was a disaster. It has to have something she buried. She changed herself after this experience. So I think the idea is you marry someone like George. He's very liberating. He's very exciting. He's nuts. He's fun. And the result is she sort of got scared straight after George. George remained nuts, but she went sort of quiet for a couple decades, and now brought back to George in the tragedy of his murder, we find that she's thinking, who was that person I used to be? And a part of it she wants to get back. That's a character I can get to. And this is actually important. Rigovich has said, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, and I don't know whether you mean you would like to ask something or say something, or you were simply apologizing for the earlier greetings, which are super cool. Nothing to apologize for. Let me know here in the comments. So one of the most important things about characters, this is really key as far as I'm concerned. I think that it's really important that you be able to put yourself into their shoes, into their place. I believe that good writing is very much partly a matter of empathy, a matter of being able to think and feel like a character, even someone radically different than you, even someone repellent to you. That's actually not a bad quality. I believe it is one of the reasons that we like narrative art, because it asks us to open our minds and our hearts to the possibilities of what it's like to be in someone else's life without all the misery of actually being in other people's lives. So that's one of the things I always look for when I'm trying to figure out a character. I listen internally for the moment that I say, oh, I can imagine being in that person. I can imagine living that life in my dreamscape for a little while. It makes sense to me. The emotions that they're feeling, while something I may not approve of or may not advise, but I can understand them. I can recognize in myself that potential. And that's actually another thing I should talk about. I believe that we all have certain basic core emotions. I do not know what they are. I don't have a list of them. I am not a psychologist. I just have this feeling that the thing that we do in art is we connect to some basic things in other people because they are in common. They may be a sort of archetypal shared community soul, or it may be that we all have the same thing and we can recognize it in each other. I don't know. What I do know is that I believe those emotions while very, very different in each person and each life, somehow or other, they're like a wellspring. They're an eternal, unlimited amount of that stuff. Uh, Joy and anger and pain and jealousy and love, all of those basic feelings, ambition. I think there's a lot of basic feelings that get shown in many different ways. One of the things you want to do as a writer is be able to let yourself recognize all of those feelings, and be able to sort of tap into them fairly easily. Not in your life, don't go crazy, but when you're writing, if you're writing anger, you want to be able to truly understand it. So here's my point. When I thought about Madeline, and I thought about this sort of back and forth, this person who went out into the world, was crazy, got scared by it and hid, and now is being shaken up out of her safety box, I understood it. And that's why I said, that's who she is. That's what I often look like when I'm working on a character. I'm like trying to say, what would it be like to be this person? So I like that. I like that Madeline's story. There's still, as we can see here, a lot of questions. Their marriage was a frightening disaster. Why? I don't know yet. I know that George was nuts. I'm beginning to think it would be cool to have him actually be nuts, like clinically mentally ill in some ways. Not sure how. Either that, or simply he got into things that were just too radical and scary. So that's a question. One of the things that I do is I get the things I can get. When you're working on the outline, you get the things you can get, like she was young and free-spirited. Their marriage was a frightening disaster. But then ask questions. Exactly how old was she when she was married? Was she 17 or was she 21? What young and free-spirited was she? Where was she from? What world is she from? Was it a stuffy, formal place and she was fighting it? Was it a chaotic place and she was finding her version of that? I don't know yet. So that's what I know about Madeline, is that the part of her that I've said wants to do something practical and engaged in her life, it's new. It's being liberated by this tragedy. I'm going to take a brief break here to look at, I've got some questions and comments. Okay. The question here is, did you do a lot of research for your stories, or do you, quote, write what you know? Excellent question. It comes from the issue of another movie I wrote and directed, actually, which was really fun, called Like, Share, Follow. The thing that's troubling about this is that it's the story of a YouTube star. I wrote this a long time ago. I wrote it back in 2015. I had no clue that I was planning to do this. But anyway, he gets stalked by a fan, and it's basically Fatal Attraction in the world of YouTube, young YouTubers. And the answer is, do you do research? Yes, but the answer I always try and give is, as much as possible, kind of try to save your research for after you've got your outline. That's tricky because a lot of cool ideas will come from research, but it is very, very easy to lose yourself in research, at least if you're me. I love research. I could just read and snoop and study all the time as long as nobody's giving me a test. So therefore, I do research. I do a lot of research. It's very informal. For Like, Share, Follow, I partly watched a lot of YouTubers, which I had stumbled into as an old person because my son was watching a lot of YouTube and I had never heard or had no respect for or interest in YouTube. And then he started saying, hey, look at this. And I'm like, okay, people are watching someone play a video game. I don't get it. But I began to watch it and I began to get it. Anyway, so the answer is, do I do research? Yes. Do I be careful not to get swept so far into the research that I lose the main job, which is narrative? Yes. I try to make sure that the research is there to help and inform the story. And the other question is, do you write what you know? And I'm a big one on this. I believe you should write what you know, but I believe you know a lot. Didn't know what it was like to be on YouTube when I wrote that, but I knew what it was like to watch it and to imagine it. I don't know what it's like to live in World War II Europe, but I can write about it because I can imagine. As I said, there are things that are common. It may be different to be in a war, but if you learn what it's like to be in war-torn Europe, if you read stories and memoirs and historical accounts and you look at pictures and stuff, you can imagine it. That's something you know. When you say write what you know, that includes what you can imagine. All right, moving along. Hello, Corn Dog Gamer. Glad to see you. There are 8 people on the stream live right now, which is really freaking amazing to me. Let's keep going with our work here on the characters, because I got that thing about Madeline, and then I went and I said, okay, I did Madeline. Let me ask some questions about Norman, because I had certain things about Norman. I had the basic idea that he was going to be a critic of society, to be somebody who is feeling left out of the changing world of the 21st century. And as a result, he's going to be sort of negative. He's critical. He's something of a scold. And I also wanted him to be kind of a ladies' man. And I could imagine this person who I have never been and certainly would never like to be with, who is constantly having relationships and constantly criticizing the other people, essentially using them, although he doesn't realize that. He thinks he's the one who is being misled or frustrated or being tolerant or helpful, but in fact, he's looking for something and he is not allowing it to happen. That part of him I knew. The part I didn't know is, how the heck are we going to like this guy? How is he going to change? So what I came up with is, the main thing about this is, if he's going to be so negative and unpleasant, it's got to be for a reason that I can have empathy for. And at least for a lead character, at least for this, I never want to say never, but I didn't want to have a monstrous lead character. So I believe deep down, he's critical because he's defensive, because he is afraid of being hurt or sensitive. So he is overcritical, over analytical, too idealistic, unable to compromise. He lacks faith. These are just notes I made to try and grab what he's like. And the main thing is, he does not admit any of this is his fault. That is his problem. He is training all of his analysis outwardly to keep from looking inside. And that brought me to this vision of Norman. Let me see where I wrote it down. Norman. What does Norman want? To undo the past, to not have been wrong. Because let's face it, he's going to tell us about a whole lot of bad relationships, and he's going to tell us about being fired from his job, which admittedly is partly because of times changing, but he's saying they're all bad. So what he's trying to do is convince everyone he meets that it's not his fault. Is that an appealing quality? No, but it might be funny if we can see through him. Rigovich, I hear you. Thank you. I see you got to go. Take care. Troy, I will answer you in just a second. Let me finish up with this character thing. And then I will get back to that very good question. So here's one of the things. He doesn't think what he's doing is trying to undo or change or manipulate our view of him in the past. He thinks he's helping the future. He thinks he's correcting people. by explaining what was wrong in the past. The main thing about all of this is my question became, why the hell would Madeline like this guy? And the answer has got to be, she sees through him. We see through him, and it'll be fun if she can speak for us. If she can say, man, you're just so defensive. You are clearly, using your intelligence as a defensive weapon. So that's what I got to is, and this is really important because I had not yet figured out why these people like each other. She sees through him. And the reason I want that is because we need to see through him. And it's good to give what you need the audience to do, to give them a voice in the story, a character who speaks that way. So I actually then thought I'll do a scene where she points out that his giving up in relationships is actually the cause of the problems, that he's constantly saying, this isn't going to work. And that's actually where he goes wrong. All right. And the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly was I had the idea that these people are having sex in every episode, even though they aren't sure they want to be together. We all know they should be. And I thought that would be just a funny gimmick, like a thing that just keeps happening in the story. It just helps with the comedy. And I thought, especially if it's really rational, it's not like, because one way that you could do that is just to say they can't help themselves. They're just driven by lust. That's actually could be very sweet and funny. But I thought more funny if they're actually sort of doing it right. There's always a reason. There's always a good explanation for why they have to have sex again. And I thought of an interesting idea for the first time this happens in the first episode. Is that, because I thought, how do they get to that moment? I mean, these are people who don't know each other. How do they end up sleeping together? And I thought, actually, what if they sleep together? What if when he shows up to protect her, which is how he first meets her, he comes to her house in order to protect her from the other crime solvers who are trying to steal her files, and he comes to warn her, and she is in the midst of her reckoning with her past. She's alone, she's looking at George's stuff, she's thinking about her past, and she has gotten drunk or stoned. And that's the moment that he shows up to save her from these crime solvers. I think this will be a very funny scene. And so at that moment, he obviously cannot sleep with her, but he's spending the night with her because she's in danger of being bothered by these other people. So they chastely end up physically sleeping together. And when they wake up, when she is no longer intoxicated, then they make love. And then from then on, they have to deal with the fact that they did that. And I think that that's a nice series of steps to get us into this concept that they keep sleeping together without intending to. Anyway, so those are some of the things. I'm going to take a pause now from all of this because I got a bunch of questions. I got a bunch of ask me almost anythings, and I think I should take that seriously. So let us begin with Troy's. Troy Gould said, what's your insight on writing a horror short film? Offhand, quick insights are A, horror film, a love film, a comedy film, doesn't matter. All films have one thing in common. They got to be good. The main thing is they got to be good. In my opinion, certainly as far as writing goes, the important thing is to focus on the characters and the story. It is so easy to get lost in the directorial, to get lost in the plot twists or genre elements, the visual. There's so many things that people put before the characters in the story. But the audience, boy, they need the characters in the story no matter what else is going on. And so I urge you to put characters and story first in your mind. Make sure that the core of that is solid. One way, I'll promote myself, go to my YouTube channel, Watch all my videos on how to tell a good story, the character arcs, dramatic action. I got to put the thumbnails of these, the graphics, so I can just throw them up here. Character arcs, the 6 essential questions, dramatic action. Go through all those, watch them all. Watch them all multiple times and click like, because that's what I think is most important, is that you're telling a story about people that we care about with an idea. Get the ending to have meaning. And remember that your ending has meaning, especially with horror. Sometimes the goal can be scare and you don't think about what it means, what you're saying about life. And while there is a cool factor to just saying life is hell, is that always what we want to say? Yeah, it's, I gotta say, like, I think it's The Others, the one where the couple is in the house and the people are attacking them, and there's just no explanation at the end until the end, and then they say, why are you doing this? And they say, because you opened the door, I think is the line. Anyway, it's a really cool movie in that last few minutes. The rest of it, the characters are weak to me, and I feel badly to say that because I don't like to criticize other people's work. But anyway, my point, horror, just like anything else, good characters, good story. As to writing a short, do it if you can. My big thing is do what you can. If you can do a short, if you can do a DIY feature, if you can do a DIY series, if you can do a play, anything that you can do to get your work past the page and into the production and release to an audience, showing it to even a small audience, is incredibly valuable. It will teach you more than I can ever teach you. And the more times you do it, the better you get. So the answer is insight on writing a short horror film. Do it and do it well. Does that help? Was that useful? Next question. Do you have any advice for adapting a novel whose story happens over the course of 30 years? Sure. Of course I do. I've got advice about everything. That's what I do here. First of all, just big question. Oh man, hold on. I'm sorry, I got to interrupt. Troy is my 800th subscriber. This is super cool. Also, thank you for the insight. Watched your 6 tips. Good. Very cool. Back to Spacious Nick. Adapting a novel. First thing about adapting a novel. Do you have the rights? If you do not have the rights, do not do this. Rights are a really tricky thing. People, even if the author is willing to give them over, very often their agents and managers and publishers are not, because they're always looking for the big money deal. Everyone in publishing is spending their time trying to sell to TV and movies and streaming. That's their big goal. They know that that's going to make a bestseller, or can. They know that that's where the money comes from, because the money from the smallest TV show is 10 times bigger than the biggest book. So the answer is they are very reluctant to give anyone the rights unless there is a big check attached. So if you don't have the rights, I advise you to look for a different story. If you do have the rights, if it's somebody you know who wrote it and they're willing to give you a legal contract allowing you to adapt it, cool. Talk to lawyers. Then we get to the next question, which is, the story happens in the course of 30 years. Couple of things. You're writing a feature or a series. If it's a feature, you're obviously going to have to compress. You're going to have to cut out a good deal. Luckily, even a novel that takes place over 30 years doesn't really take place over, like you don't watch all 30 years. You get a section here, a section there, a section there. The first thing I would say about adapting anything, make an outline of it. Go through it, follow mine or some process by which you reduce the big sweep of words into a scene, a concept for a scene in which someone is trying to do something. Sometimes in a novel, those scenes can be big and complex. Try and break it down so that you can say, what are the scenes that will be workable in a script? So that's the first thing about adapting a novel. Break it down to an outline. William Goldman said he used to read through it 3 times with different highlighters. And if something was highlighted more than once, that was really good. And 3 times was total winner. That's another good trick. The main thing about adapting a novel is you have to look for how you're going to transfer anything that is internal, thoughts, summaries, descriptions of feelings, into behavior, into actions, into dialogue. That's the other big, big thing. And that can be, by the way, not to say there can't be like narration. That's cool. Barry Lyndon is a really cool adaptation of a novel with a great narrator. Without that narrator, that thing doesn't work. And I frankly think, although it's very slow, a really cool movie and very powerful. There are so many ways to adapt fiction. The first thing you should do is look for models, stories that are like it on the screen that can be something you can sort of say, how did they do that? For, like Sense and Sensibility. It's an amazing script by Emma Thompson, adapted from a novel. There are many, many great adaptations of novels. I don't know what the novel's like, so I can't say this one or that one. So that's the next thing about adapting a novel. As far as 30 years, you're going to need to pick out the key events. You're not going to be really spending 30 years with these people. You're going to say, in 1912, this happened. In 1940, this happened. Those two actions are actually separated by a big cut. And what you're doing is you're telling a bit of a story here, a bit of a story there. Also, if you're doing it for a series or a limited series or something in episodes, look at how they do those, because structurally it's different. The important thing about doing it as a feature is how do you find the beginning, middle, and end structure that fits in 2 to 2.5 hours. 2 is really the thing you want. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts on how do you adapt a novel that happens over the course of 30 years. If you have more specific questions than Space Your Snick, please feel free to ask them or put them into the writingforscreens.com contact me. I'll try and answer there. You have another question, but it's really big. How do you create deep characters? I'm working on some videos about that, so I'm going to hold that for then. Character is an important, really important part of writing, and I'll get to that then. Okay. And Troy wrote, how? I'm not sure how what. So let me know. Spacious Nicks, thanks. You are welcome. So we have gone a bit. I am going to go a little bit back to our writing project because there was more. There was more to get into. What did I do? What did I do here? Oh, yeah, Madeline and Norman. The other cool thing about Madeline and Norman, this is in the outline, and I moved it down here, I believe. Madeline and Norman. Meet Madeline. Well, the thing I wanted to get to, I don't seem to have the words for it here, but what I wanted to talk about is figuring out what they want. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. The most important thing about characters is that you need, for me, lots of people write different ways. If you know what they want, you can begin to figure out how everything in the story relates to it. It doesn't all have to be that they're trying to get what they want. Sometimes they retreat from what they want. Sometimes what they want requires them to take like 50 steps to get to the thing they want. And so what they briefly want is something very different. Like they want to open a restaurant, so they have to convince someone to get them to invest, so they have to learn all about that person, blah, 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 blah. So the main thing is I've got this idea that what Norman wants is to to undo the past, to change our view of him in the past, to not be in the wrong. And that brings me to a really important concept. They don't have to get what they want, and what they want does not have to be a good thing. What Norman wants in this story is terrible. First of all, you can't change the past. So, Norman, you are a fool. Cool. We got a character who's a fool. He's a smart fool. He's a brave fool because he goes and tries to protect Madeline from these crazy people. But one thing I know is if what he wants is to undo the past, the story is going to be about him learning to give up on wanting that because he can't get it. And so that actually is worth putting in the overview. Norman's story, not this whole story. Norman's story is about learning to let go of undoing the past and do better in the present. That is the whole thing. And the cool thing about that is that it relates very well to what Madeline wants, which I realized is to change her life, to not stay stuck and decaying and aging in fear, to go out and try and grow and be better. And that is the sort of thing that definitely will lead to her forcing Norman to give up on what he wants. And that is a sense of the story. Now I have a sense this story is going to play out over episodes, but this is what it's about. Big, big, good stuff. Very briefly, one more question, and then we're going to be out. How do I pace a short film without it feeling rushed? And the answer is, don't put too much in. You're going to have to be. I would really, first of all, watch a lot of them. Watch a lot of them, see how they do it. And by that, I mean be really mechanically. How long are their scenes? How many scenes does a film you like have? Of shorts that you like, how do they pull off what they do? How many stages of the plot can they fit in? Now, you'd be amazed at how much you can fit in. I'm always stunned when you see a good half-hour comedy show. Some of them are only 22 minutes, because of commercials. I'm amazed at how many twists and turns you can get into 22 minutes. A short ideally is less than that. Well, it depends. Some long shorts are 22 minutes. But if you're going to do a 7 to 12 minute short, still a lot you can get in there. So I would say the first thing you do is be realistic about if you want more in there. It's just like you've got so much story to tell. Don't do it as a short. If you're going to do a short, recognize the realities of the medium. There's only so many scenes you can get in. So that is how to pace a short film without feeling rushed. The other things about pace honestly come from having the experience of writing, shooting, showing. So one other thing I would suggest is do some mini shorts for yourself, just private. Shoot them with your phone and edit them on your computer and show them to two people. And that's all you need to do to get a better sense of pace, of what plays and how it plays. Just write some scenes and have a couple of actors play the scenes for you, just as practice. Tell everyone it's for practice, it's not for show, just so they get to practice, you get to practice. You will learn from doing it. You can't really understand pace until you have shot things and edited them and watched how they play. I'm going to end. Spacious Nick has, do you have a good suggestion of good script to read to learn from it? I assume you mean about novels. I would say not offhand, but contact me through writingforscreens.com. Contact me. Ask me that question specifically when I can do some researching and thinking, and I will try and write you back a quick email. There are, as Stana is saying, and she beat me to it, there are some good sites for screenplays. Google or Bing or DuckDuck. Screenplays, PDF. You want PDF scripts. Where did I write? In one of my videos, I talk about this. Watch out for any script that has no cover page or is exactly like the finished movies. Because if it's exactly like the finished movies, it's not a script. It's a transcript. Somebody copied it from the film. No script is exactly like the movie. So try and find a script that's a real script. One good way is if it has a cover page, and if the cover page has a company name on it or some dates, that may be it. I'm going to end now. I'm going to say goodbye. Stana points out Legends of the Fall, a good adaptation of a novel. There are so many adaptations, so many movies adapted from novels. Legends of the Fall is a fine one. This is a lot for a day. I'm going to take a break now. I am going to say see ya tomorrow. There we go. See you tomorrow, guys.